Hello everybody, you're listening to The Archer on Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Archer on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search for The Archer on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And if you would like to, you can reach out to me here at the studio on Dane.Cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. That's Dane.Cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. So this week we're going to be chatting to activist Jessica Hayes. She's a vegan activist. Fascinating person, lots to chat about. But before we do that, we are going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for this week's installment of A Muller Branca, which is a short story by myself, Dane Cobain. A couple more weeks passed, and Christiana and Dimitrio's relationship continued along in its rocky trajectory. They broke up twice and made up both times, though without consummation. They made up, but they didn't make out. Dimitrio was still unemployed and still drinking, but he'd found himself a new project. One evening, after the return of the wordless drone, when the two of them had been listening to an 80s special on one of the music channels, he'd headed up into their tiny attic in search of its source. It was more of a storage loft than an attic, barely 3 feet high and with a rough footprint of a small car, but they still called it the attic because that's how it had been described to them by the estate agent. They rarely used it, other than to store stuff that they no longer needed, but which they didn't want to throw out in case they changed their minds. Dimitrio hadn't found the source of the noise, but he hadn't expected to. Instead, he climbed back down the rickety rope ladder with a laptop computer in his hands. "Careful," Christiana said. "You might fall." "I haven't had that much." "Still," she replied, "if you slip and break your neck, the cops will never believe I had nothing to do with it." "Very funny," Dimitrio said. "I'm not joking." Dimitrio spent most of that night in the living room, taking the laptop apart with tiny screwdrivers and fiddling with the different parts to see what could be salvaged. He was mostly interested in the hard drive, just to see what was on there. He hadn't used the machine since his teens, back in the MSN Messenger days. He wasn't quite drunk, but he was 1 or 2 sheets to the wind, and it was intricate work, especially for a guy who knew less about computers than he'd like to admit. He was so engrossed with his work that he didn't notice that the TV had gone into standby and he was sitting in silence. For her part, Christiana was relaxing on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling as though the shadows that drifted slowly across it were a theatrical performance. She watched the shadows most nights, marvelling at the way that they changed from one night to another, depending upon who and what went past the streetlights. "Christiana," Dimitrio called. "Christiana, come in here." "What?" "Just get in here," he repeated. "You're not going to believe this." That was the latest installment of A Muller Branca by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Straight 8 with Move On Up.
And don't you cry. Your friends might understand you. Well, bye, bye. Well, move on up.
said and walked away. How far is tomorrow? And a new day. Can't stand being here, dancing on my own. I wish I could fix it all, to have those loves like we had before. So don't walk home, say no words no more. I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky, and we can be the fools. Oh, I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky, 'cause this is me and you. Now it's been months and weeks and days, yet in the distance I see your face. Cloudy sky will make a sunny day, and I want my partner in crime, a misty one line to fit my rhyme, and you're the one who fits in just so fine. Oh, oh, oh. I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky, and we can be the fools. Oh, I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky, 'cause this is me and you. I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky. I can take you on the road tonight, where we can fly where is the sky, 'cause this is me and you. And we can be the fools.
That was Where is the Sky by Clara, and before that we had Move On Up by Straight 8. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and it's time for us to be joined now by this week's guest, who is activist Jessica Hay.
So the first question, this is a question I ask everybody. I think you're going to have quite a good answer to this, because I know some of your tastes for this. It is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Last book that I read, it was one of the Horus Heresy books from Black Library. I found it in a charity shop.
Nice.
It was good. It was quite good, actually. A 63 book series, and it was really intimidating to read it while it was still being written. But I thought, it's done now, and this one's cheap, so I picked it up and I read it, and yeah, it was all right. It was pretty good. It's pretty old, so it was, but yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, and talking of long series, I know you're a Terry Pratchett fan as well. So I've got to ask, what's your favorite Discworld novel?
Monsters Regiment, 100%. Monsters Regiment is the best Terry Pratchett novel. I started reading Raising Steam recently, which is one of the ones just before he died, unfortunately. So it's not one of his better ones because he got worse towards the end. But I am sort of now reading the last ones, which is very sad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, I did that recently myself. Went through the last ones and read it's called Terry Pratchett, A Life with Footnotes, and it was written by Rob Wilkins, who was his kind of assistant. And that's really worth reading. But again, it's devastating towards the end when he starts talking about, his later life.
Yeah, I think his assistant Sorry, my internet connection might have just died.
That's all right.
I think the new one got brought out, right, which was some of his sort of last works, which I thought they were all crushed under a steamroller. So I'm not quite sure where this one came from, but I've not
Yeah,
read
no,
the newest release.
I heard that as well. It was part of his will, wasn't it, to get them all crushed? So who knows? Cool. Okay. Well, today there's a bunch of stuff I want to chat to you about. Um, Mainly veganism and the activism that you do as well. I guess let's start with the veganism side of things. How long have you been vegan, and what was behind your decision to start?
So I went vegan in December of 2019, just before
Hmm.
COVID. I went vegan for really bad reasons, actually, really not great reasons. My partner basically said, "I'm going to cook vegan food, and
Hmm.
unless you want to cook for yourself, we're going to eat the same food." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And then after a month of having really tasty vegan food, and having no complaints about like what I was missing,
Hmm.
she put me down in front of slaughterhouse footage and went, "This is what you pay for if you buy meat."
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, "Oh boy, well I suppose I'm vegan now." Um,
Yeah.
and and that's sort of why I do switch activism, because it was like really hard for me to actually grasp the ethics.
Hmm.
So I went from a bit of a meathead to vegan basically overnight. But
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and to be fair, it's one of those things. There are different ways into veganism, and I think most people are kind of like, whichever route you take, that's fine. And also, there's the kind of the three strands where it's good for the environment, it's good for animals, it's good for your health, and it's kind of like, even if you start because it's for health reasons, you tend to then get interested into the ethics side of things or the environmental side of things as well. Um, and so, in terms of the activism that you do, what kind of activism do you do? And I appreciate we've only got 20 minutes, and you could be talking for an hour here on just the different things that you get up to.
Yeah, so I basically do everything I can do. I think the only major ones I've not done are direct action and hunt sabbing, but I'll do street
Hmm.
outreach, I'll do like corporate outreach, I'll do like pressure campaigns, I do vegan running. I do anything and everything that looks fun and I think might work. But most of that involves talking to people. I think I'm pretty good at talking to people, so I try and focus on that.
Yeah. And in terms of the outreach that you've done, I've seen sort of some of the reactions that you have. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. Let's start with talking about the positive. What are some of the nicest bits of feedback you've had from people? Like, I know you've had people say, okay, I'm going to give it a try, things like that. What are some of those big success moments that you've had?
I mean, I don't think you ever sort of forget the people who you make cry in the street. There's a
Hmm.
few like really like sort of prominent ones. My first ever conversation that I ever had was with an Italian pig farmer, and a lady was translating for him. And after a while, I stopped talking to him and I started talking to her, and she
Hmm.
started crying in the street. And this was my first ever vegan conversation. And she said, like, I'm gonna think about this. And AV's party line is, you don't tell them to think about it, you tell them to do something. So I said to her,
Hmm.
I don't want you to think about it, I want you to do something. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna do something about it. And I didn't push her more because it was my first ever conversation. I didn't know how, but that was my first one.
Yeah.
I've had Muslims in their 60s, who I've spoken to about the Hadiths and the Quran, say like,
Hmm.
thank God for you, like thank God you're here to talk to me about my religion, and said they're going to go vegan. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of people crying in the street and saying like, I'm really glad we had this conversation.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating. I mean, it's funny, mentioning Muslims. We have quite a large Muslim population here in High Wycombe, and one of the things that because it seems to me like there's common ground there as well, because obviously when you're Muslim, you tend to follow the halal diet, and there are two ways to make something halal. Obviously, one just comes down to the way it's slaughtered. The other thing is just if it's vegan, it's halal because there's. So like halal sweets are the best because it's like I always go down like the quote unquote ethnic food aisles or whatever in the supermarket because it's like, well, I can eat most of these things. So I think there is a lot of common ground there. And so in terms of the activism that you do, I mean, like how do you prepare for that? Do you watch other people's activism and see how they do it? Do you do sort of research into what's going on? I mean, I suppose a lot of it's second nature. Like you must just know now, okay, well, this is what happens in poultry farming, this is what happens in dairy farming, that sort of thing.
So I spent a lot of time watching like Earthling Ed and Joey Carbstrong
Hmm.
and the like. But I didn't really absorb it until I started doing it. You know, every time you have a conversation at the start, usually there'll be like another random like sort of thing that they say to you that you've never heard before. And you just go away and you look up like how you should have replied to that, right? You sort of learn it by doing it. And that's sort of what I did. You know, the reason I got really good about talking to people who are Muslim about veganism is because I live, you know, on the outskirts of Bradford. I have done activism in Bradford. If you do activism in Bradford, you basically end up talking to mostly Muslims. So you have to learn about their religion, because otherwise, how do you have a conversation with them? But yeah, I sort of just learned it by doing it, and I've been having difficult conversations my whole life. Like, it's just what I did with my life. So it's just an extension of that.
Yeah. And so talking about difficult conversations, I want to cover the more negative side, because you've fallen victim to your fair share of trolling and abuse. How do you cope with it?
I just don't really care, to be honest. I think the only thing that really bothers me is when I feel like there's no like win that I can do. So a lot of the time I'll get stuck in conversations where I don't want to continue having that conversation, but I know that if I walk away from them, they'll feel like they've won. So I end up just sort of standing there and taking their abuse, because there's no like way for me to get out without sort of like being seen as like they've won. But that's the thing that bothers me the most, is feeling like I'm wasting my time. Like, I don't really care if someone's like insulting me. As long as I'm not wasting my time, I don't really mind.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Fun question for you. I'll be interested to see how you answer this one. Is it possible to be a feminist if you're not vegan?
It's a hard one, right? Like, I mean, I think you can say that you're a human supremacist feminist. But no, I think if you care about, the objectification of all female bodies, then you probably shouldn't be drinking milk or eating cheese or eggs or even like meat, right? Because, the animals are still sexually violated to create animals. So probably not, no.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wondered what you would make of that. How do you find the time and money to do all of your activism? I know it's something of a struggle.
So I'm quite privileged, and that's also why I do as much as I do. Like, the reason I can go out and do activism as many times a week as I do is because I don't have to worry about money. That might not last for the rest of my life, but it'll probably last for the next couple of years. But it is a lot of privilege, and I don't pretend that's not the case. Not everyone can do as much as me. Because not everyone, most people have to go out and work. Most people have to like worry about bills and stuff, right? I'm lucky enough to do as much as I do because I have a nest egg that I can sit on.
Yeah. And speaking of privilege, so I'm sure you've come across this, one of the criticisms you see sometimes about veganism is that, oh, it's only for privileged people, only for wealthy people because of how expensive it is. What's your take on that?
I think that's not true, right? People often say, oh, veganism is more expensive, and that's just almost like sort of exclusively not the case. When studies have checked to see if it's more expensive or not to be vegan, it's shown like that it's usually a lot cheaper to be vegan. And when we look at like countries where it is harder to get food, right, because they live in less privileged circumstances, usually their diet is like predominantly vegan already, right, just by necessity. So no, I don't think veganism is for the privileged. I think, obviously, having the ability to ethically consider where your food comes from might be for the privileged. But once you've made that consideration, it doesn't require much privilege to be vegan.
You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with vegan activist Jessica Hay, and this is Scardinals with Special Brew.
Well, it's okay, don't go away, I'll go back when there's nothing I know. Need some more to restore all the feeling that I got. Well, I'm a phone, give me more, all I want is a thousand. Whoa, 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 whoa.
That was Cardinals with their version of Special Brew. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by activist Jessica Hay.
Yeah, it's also hard to go back once you've asked that question. You can't unlearn things. I think maybe that's where a lot of these tears come from. I mean, you hear often as well, people say, like, when they're asked, like, oh, what's your biggest regret? And it's like, that I didn't go vegan sooner, because you can't change the past. And so I think that's where a lot of the tears come from, is you realize, like, oh, I've been a part of this sort of system. And, like, yes, now you can change going forwards, but you can kind of can't change where you've come from. But you're right as well. I think, that argument about it being expensive, maybe it is if you're eating, juicy marbles and Beyond Burgers every night. It is pretty expensive. If you're eating, like, tomato pasta and, like, stir fry, which is like my go-to. Stir fry is great, super cheap, super easy. You can cook it in a batch and freeze it. So yeah.
My go-to meal is literally dog food. So I'll eat the same food my dog eats when I don't have anything in, like, the house to cook. I'll just eat my dog's food, which is like a vegetable stew with rice and beans. It costs basically nothing to, like, make it, and it's pretty tasty. Like, you just put some random spices on it, and the dog has the unspiced version. I have the spiced version.
Amazing. Nice. So do you make your own dog food?
Yeah, I make vegetable stew for my dog for dinner because it's cheaper than he has Benevo for lunch. He has porridge for breakfast, Benevo for lunch, and then he has, like, vegetable stew with rice for dinner. Yeah,
cool. See, I have cats, and as you know, cats are obligate carnivores, so you have to give them meat. So whereas obviously, see, when people aren't vegan, they think that vegans haven't thought about these things, and it's like, trust me, everybody has said so many times, like, we have researched this, So your dog probably eats, like, a healthier diet than most dogs do, and in fact, the fact that you can pretty much eat the same thing, that's probably a pretty good sign that he's eating well,
Do you know the fun fact about vegan cat food or cat food in general? So cat food, cats are obligate carnivores, and the reason they're obligate carnivores is because they can't synthesize taurine in their body, so they need to eat taurine. But if you boil meat, taurine is one of the nutrients that degrades and disappears. So they started adding taurine to the cat food after they'd cooked it, but they weren't adding taurine from meat; they were adding plant-based taurine. So even your meat-based cat food has plant-based taurine in it. So the people who used to do this basically made plant-based cat food by just adding the plant-based taurine to plants. But cats are fussy buggers, so sometimes they won't eat.
No, that's very true. Yeah. No, awesome. Okay, so let's see. So in terms of the activism you do, quite a lot of what you do is online based with your Twitch streams. How does the internet and social media help you to reach people?
I'm not sure I know that yet because I don't have that many viewers. But I am sort of getting to the point where random people are finding my videos that I've never spoken to and haven't been on my stream. So, like, I believe that any activism you do on social media should be derived in physical conversations that you're having with actual sort of, like, meat eaters, because then you are at least doing some activism, even if it doesn't blow up on social media, right? You're not just creating content for the sake of content. But I've started now getting random people writing on my YouTube videos saying, like, hey, I randomly found this by the algorithm. And I'm considering going vegan. Like, keep doing this. It's great. I don't know if that's going to increase. I don't know. I'm very new to this. So I have no idea.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. So One thing I want to ask you about, if that's okay, is to talk about your trans journey,
Yeah.
and trans rights in general, really, because I think it's so. I'll tell you what. I'll read this out word for how I've written this. So I'll put. It's pretty clear how we can do better as a society when it comes to the way we treat animals.
Mhm.
How do you think we can do better when it comes to the way we treat trans people?
Um, I think just normalizing trans people's existence. Obviously, we're only a small minority of the community where like 0.75% of men and 0.7% of women, I think, are trans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might grow. Obviously, it took me from the age of I knew I was trans about 8, and then I
Mm-hmm.
actually came out at the age of 31. So I think having visible like representations of our community really helps people not take 23 years to realize that they're
Mm-hmm.
trans. Um, but I think just sort of normalizing trans existence, right? People who wear pins just every single day,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really tiny, tiny step that you can make that like makes people just casually remember that trans people exist, even if
Yeah.
there's not a trans person in the room, right? So we live in a society now that's flooded with Free Palestine pins, and that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Um, but you know, if everyone wore the same amount of trans pins, like that would be equally amazing. That would be really, really good.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
would
I saw.
actively sort of that would actively sort of fix the problem as well, because to some extent buying a free Palestine pin, if you buy it from a charity that funds aid to Palestine, that's great, you are doing
Yeah.
something. But people being aware of the Palestine situation maybe doesn't do as much, whereas people
Yeah.
actively being aware of trans people and like the trans problem would actually be part and parcel to solving the problem too, so it would almost be like better
Yeah.
than a Palestine pin. So
Well, I was going to say I saw a thing on TikTok where it was talking about the healthcare money going towards trans people, and basically the classic uh skinhead guy or whatever being like, oh, that's a waste of our tax money and whatnot. And the guy who was in the video was professor of whatever biology or whatever it was, I don't know, but he was talking about, well, actually it's essentially preventative healthcare. If you've got a trans person, and you, again, if you normalize trans people in society and they feel able to come out earlier, like if nothing else, it's like the mental health benefits of them being able to be their true selves. That's saving a huge ton of money. It's just all of these different things that I think people don't factor in. And one of the things that so if we can talk about, because you've been trying to donate a kidney, right?
I
and
have.
and the way that process, and then being on HRT, is like how the way they clash with one another is just something. Unless you knew somebody who had been through that situation, you just wouldn't occur to you like, okay, is this going to be a problem? So I wonder, can you talk to us a little bit about what was behind that decision, and what's thrown a spanner in the works?
So I have a friend. She's a wonderful friend. We met uh not very long ago, but it was very romance friendship, platonic
Mm-hmm.
romance friendship, right? And she has kidney failure. Her kidneys are not doing very well. And for the weekend we basically spent 8 hours a day with each other. And then we left, and we left as newfound best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered in this weekend that she wasn't very well, and I started Googling kidney failure and like whether or not you can help in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
I found out that there's lots of people in the UK, 5,000 people who need kidneys in the UK. It's like the majority of the organ waiting list is people
Mm-hmm.
who need kidneys. Most people can donate a kidney. We have two. You don't need to die before you donate one. You just need to have healthy kidneys and be willing to put yourself through a bit of an ordeal. So I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sign up. And I went through the whole process. I've had major abdominal surgery before when I was a child, so I sort of knew what I was getting in for.
Yeah.
I'm fit and healthy, so I thought I'd be fine. Unfortunately, I can't donate a kidney unless I come off estrogen for 6 weeks, which um is hard because if you come off estrogen, it means you also come off testosterone blockers and you have testosterone in your system again. Testosterone is a drug that, it's a hormone, but it is also,
Mm-hmm.
it drastically changes your mental health. I don't really want to do that. And I'm sort of gripping with that at the minute because I know that if I was giving a kidney to like someone I cared about deeply, like an actual personal friend, I would probably do that in a heartbeat and just suffer. And it would be awful,
Mm-hmm.
but my friend wouldn't die. Um, so I'm sort of struggling with the idea that I'm not willing to do that for a stranger, which sounds crazy. Because we should be more willing to do things for our close friends and family than a stranger. But it makes me question sort of my principles of like sort of socialism.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's basically two different principles at war with each other, and no, you can't have one winning without the other losing, sort of thing. But again, it's something that only would come up in this sort of specific conversation, I suppose. I mean, obviously, without giving medical advice and whatnot, but like, why is it that you can't do it whilst being on the estrogen? Have they explained why?
Yeah, so being on estrogen, whether it's for HRT, whether it's for like menopause treatment, whatever it's for, it drastically increases your likelihood of developing blood clots.
Right. Yes.
And it's not always easy for people who are doing surgery on you to know if you developed a blood clot. So it wouldn't be very obvious whether or not you were about to drop dead, basically. So they try and minimize the risk of blood clots during surgery as much as they can. Obviously, if I was on HRT, if I was on estrogen and I got hit by a bus, they would still go into surgery to try and save my life. But this is not like a required surgery, so they're really, really
surgery
hesitant.
or whatever. Yeah. No, it's a tough one. Okay, just a couple of other questions. So obviously, I came across you through Vegan Runners. I wondered, could you tell us how did you get into vegan run? How did you get into running, rather? And what is Vegan Runners?
I got in accidentally, sort of. I used to go to a place called Manchester Pig Save, where they went and they watched pig trucks going into slaughterhouses and sort of, witnessed their last journey. They run a fun run every year called Run for the Planet, and they invited me to come do that. And they were like, "You don't have to run, but it's only 5K. It's pretty easy, and you can walk it if you want." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do this. This sounds fun." And I went, and I didn't train that much for it, but I managed to run the whole 5K, and I was really, really proud of myself. Like, I came away with it like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And they were like, you can do this every week. There's a parkrun every week. So I started doing parkrun every week, just in my local one. And there was no vegan runners there. It was just me. And then one day, about 15 of them showed up at my local parkrun, all wearing vegan runners kit. And I was like, oh boy, these are the vegan runners, are they? And they were like, you should come, you should join us. And then I basically just went as often as I could because they were really, really wonderful people. And it was just an opportunity to sort of detox from the world. And I was getting fit as well, so it was good for my mental health, good for my physical health, and I made loads of friends.
Yeah. How many was it? You you organised a meetup this weekend, didn't you? How many went to that?
I think there was 38 vegan runners who were registered. And then there was like a couple who weren't, like 3 or 4 who weren't registered. So 41 maybe in total, like vegans who were there running. Nice. And we all went for a big breakfast afterwards and took over the top floor of a cafe, and then we went for vegan ice cream afterwards. It was really, really nice.
Well, and as you're a runner, got to ask this question: where do you get your protein?
Where do I get my protein? Mostly beans and lentils, and random vegetables. I don't really do the whole tofu thing because trans gal. Mostly beans and lentils.
Very nice. Awesome. Okay. That's pretty much it. Just the next questions really. So it's 2 in 1. So what have you got planned next, and where can people follow you to stay up to date?
So tomorrow I'm in Manchester to gate crash the Co-op AGM. Co-op are supposed to be a cooperative. They're supposed to listen to their members. Their members keep voting that they should drop Franken chickens, which are a cruel breed of chickens that grow in 35 days and then are killed. They live really short, like not very nice lives. So we're going to go say hello. And then at the weekend I'm doing AV in London, so I'm doing an 8-hour cube in London. So a lot of activism next. And you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm trying to get followers on TikTok at Jess Doing Activism with 1 S, all one word.
Big thank you to Jessica Hay for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Glenda Benavides with Walking.
Walking my way down that dirty old road, and I'm walking my way down, and I lost my soul. my soul full of big bright lights, and I signed my name, Lord, and it didn't feel so right. Nobody told me I would pay the price. Oh yeah, and I sold my soul for fool's paradise. For the big life, you gotta pay the price. I'm walking my way down that dirty old road. I'm walking my way down. I don't wanna go. I'm walking my way down something I owe, and I'm walking my way down, and I don't wanna go. There's nothing to show. Listen up, he said this. Now time to pay. Ooh, always calling my name. There's no way out of this trouble, you say. Oh, I played my cards, and there's no one to play. The devil that won my soul in his con game. There's no one to blame. Walking my way down that dirty old road. I'm walking my way down, but I don't wanna go. I'm walking my way down for something I owe. I'm walking my way down, and I don't wanna go. No, that deserted road. I'm walking my way down that dirty old road. Make it go, make it go. You know it's time to go. I don't wanna go. No. And I'm walking, and you know what? You gotta pay the price. Goddamn cone's going a long time.
Hello, old friend, so good to hear you again. Forgot about you, so caught up chasing the blues. I know, old friend, you feel your world means to an end. That I forgot you with these for kings and vinyl memories. But now it's time to make your mark, be a guiding light in someone's dark. And now it's time to touch them with your spark. And oh, the Was I wrong, and was it you all along? I couldn't resist chasing ghosts in the mist. Now it's time to make your mark, be a guiding light in someone's dark. Now it's time to touch them with your spark. No, they're singing and they're dancing, they're calling out your name, so play it again. No, they're singing and they're dancing, they're calling out your name, so play it again. Be the one to move them, take memories, improve them, become the soundtrack of their lives. Be the one to lift their hearts when their world is torn apart. Now it's time to touch them with your spark. No, they're singing and they're dancing, they're calling out your name, so play it again. No, they're singing and they're dancing, they're calling out your name, so play it again. They're calling out your name, so play it again.
That was Play It Again by Colin Upfield, and before that we had Walking by Glenna Benavides. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Yorkshire now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
The soundtrack to the film Listermania, an LP I bought from the vintage vinyl sale at the Front Room Cafe in Castle Street, High Wycombe. Listermania is a film directed by Ken Russell, starring Roger Daltrey as Franz Liszt. It has a soundtrack produced and arranged by Rick Wakeman, using themes originally written by Liszt and Richard Wagner. Franz Liszt was a famous 19th century composer and piano virtuoso. His music was very much in the Romantic style. I would recommend his Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, the piece that he is almost certainly most famous for. It is one of the most exuberant and bouncy pieces of music ever written. Franz Liszt is known for the heavy hammering of the keys on big chords, super fast trills, and the elaborate flourishes that go the whole length of the keyboard. But there are also simple, subtle melodies, such as his other well-known piece, Der Liebestraum, meaning the love dream. I actually bought a CD of his piano pieces so I could get an idea of Wakeman's source material. As with much classical music, I found at least one tune worth stealing. The whole 19th century classical repertoire is an excellent resource for public domain musical ideas. The film is like a rock star biopic or a collection of excessive MTV videos. It is also a bawdy sex romp, sort of Carry On Franz Liszt, or Confessions of a World Champion Pianist. I was still a teenager when I saw the film. I was a fan of The Who, and I had liked the Tommy film which Ken Russell also produced. In fact, I was interested in all things Ken Russell. I had seen the Monty Python Ken Russell parody that starts with the cry of "Anyone for tennis" and ends in a bloodbath. At the time I found Listermania both funny and entertaining. Some people rank it as one of the worst films ever. I have since seen it as an adult, and it has not aged well. It has also made it so that I always imagine Wagner, who was actually Liszt's son-in-law, as a cross between Hitler and Frankenstein's monster. If Ken Russell was one of the most over-the-top film directors ever, then Rick Wakeman has to be one of the most over-the-top rock musicians. King Arthur on Ice being a prime example. As a cape-wearing, outspoken, larger-than-life prog rock keyboard player, either with the band Yes or solo, he was very much the Franz Liszt of the 70s. Rick Wakeman turns many of the Liszt and Wagner themes into mid-70s Moog synthesizer-led prog fests. He also played the part of Thor in the film. The music is made entertaining by its ludicrousness. It is not so much classical meets rock as it is classical and rock blitzed together in a blender with the lid left off. The music gives you those rubato-charged climaxes that only romantic classical music can, even with a bit of Fender bass and offbeat snare. Sometimes in place of the synth we actually get real strings. It is in places intentionally amusing, like the opening track that has chopsticks played like a 19th century piano concerto, that sounds like a Bill Bailey parody. The Liszt and Wagner pieces that have been beefed up with rock instrumentation at least have more artistic merit than those hooked on classics monstrosities we had back in the day. The song that works best is the one sung by Paul Nicholas, credited to Liszt with lyrics by Wakeman and Russell. Nicholas played the part of Wagner in the film. A lyrical version of Liszt's Liebestraum No. 3 should have been something very special, such is the excellence of the melody. It appears on the soundtrack as Love's Dream, with lyrics written by Roger Daltrey. The problem is that Daltrey was not the right singer for the song, and I say that as a Who fan. It would much better suit a real musical theatre voice. The final song, based on a similar theme to Love's Dream, actually suits Roger Daltrey much better, especially as it reaches a gospel-like climax. To quote the sleeve notes, France had all the creative talent to back up all the flashiness. He was a heavy dude in the eyes of the critics and his fellow composers, like Richard Wagner for instance. He had great chops on his axe, the acoustic piano. Forget those dry, dreary history books you had to read in school. The 19th century was a very hip century. Listomania. Rick Wakeman and Roger Daltrey.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Jessica Hay for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. If you want to reach out to me here at the studio, you can drop me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s, local arts news, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Radio Generation with their version of Gene Genie. I'll catch you next week.
Snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and flashback blazers, and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White. New York's a go-go and everything tastes nice. Oh, little green, woo-hoo. Gene lives on his back. Gene loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Gene, let yourself go. Sits like a man, but he smiles like a reptile. She loves him, but just for a short while. She's scratching the sand, won't let go of his hand. He says he's a beautician, sells you nutrition, and keeps all your dead hair for making up underwear. Poor little greenie.
Genie lives on his back. Genie loves chimney stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. Simple-minded, can't drive his motor. Lights on the neon, sleeps in a capsule. Loves to be loved. Loves to be loved. Lives on his back. Genie loves chimney stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. Genie lives on his back. Genie loves chimney stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. You betcha.